Today, our spiritual journey takes its annual hard turn into the wilderness. It's a journey that Jesus took to learn about himself and who God called him to be. And that's why we do it every year. It's like the spiritual checkup or an oil change for our soul. Are we on track with who God is calling us to be? Is there something new or different that we're called to? Or something unnecessary or harmful distracting us from our journey ever closer to God? The journey starts by acknowledging our wretchedness. What a word! If you grew up in certain churches, maybe it seems normal or true, that word. But for younger generations that tend to emphasize self-care and being enough, it feels kind of self-hating. In fact, the whole prayer book service of Ash Wednesday really gave me pause when I put it together for today. The service needs a major rewrite to be accessible to people who are spiritually hungry, but not steeped in the language of the Anglican Reformation. It's good, deep, true language, but it doesn't easily translate to a newcomer. If you are one of those people, one of those newcomers, I hope this short homily helps, and maybe next year I will try that rewrite. If you got stuck on the word wretchedness in our opening collect, it's so important to look at the very next clause in the collect. It says, God, you hate nothing you have made. Spiritual truths are usually the ones that occupy that narrow space, that balance on the tightrope between our human tendencies. If we only focus on our individual and collective moral failures, the wretchedness, then we end up self-loathing. But if we only focus on the God is love part, without acknowledging our personal and collective mess, then we end up with toxic positivity, denial of our mistakes, and whitewashing over the brokenness of the world. Ash Wednesday and the season of Lent hold these truths together. Yes, we mess up. Yes, we are fragile. We are dust. But God doesn't make things that are worthless. We are beloved dust. How can we align ourselves with God to do more good and make fewer messes with the amount of time we are given on earth? During this season of reflection and tuning up our spiritual life, sometimes people give up things, and sometimes they take on new practices. After admitting that I was struggling with feeling busy to my spiritual director, I showed him my calendar, which is an organized mess. And he laughed at me, like from the belly, which, by the way, spiritual directors are not supposed to do. And then he invited me to start to think about my schedule as a spiritual practice, building it in a way that left room for reflection, for contemplation, and to notice all the ways that God is in the people I meet with, the work that we do, and the conversations that we share. This is a practice all about being beloved dust, embracing my limits, and inviting God to help me realign my soul. I'm sure it will feel hard before it feels easy. In today's passage from the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus shows us that as we travel along on our spiritual journey, we should store up our treasures in heaven instead of on earth. This is helpful advice in the season of Lent, because it's kind of the opposite of our common wisdom. We say, I'll put my money where my heart is. If I care about something, then I'll invest in it. But Jesus is arguing that it works the other way. that our hearts are followers, not leaders. We train them by how we invest our time and our money. My spiritual director gently pointed out that I was training myself to feel a sense of scarcity and unnecessary pressure, instead of pausing, taking a breath, and connecting with God. If we invest in heaven, our heart becomes tethered to the divine instead of trained by our anxieties. When I invest in moments of quiet and contemplation in the midst of my days, I find heaven is already here with me on my journey, even in this season in the wilderness. As a holy family community, we can invest in one another in this season of Lent. We can invest in listening to one another. We can invest in understanding one another's points of view. We can invest in our deep relationship with God and understanding our call. What is the tune-up that your soul needs this Lent? Is there a new call on your heart in this wilderness season? What treasures is Jesus inviting you to store up in heaven so that your heart can follow them straight to him?